And on the top right side of the map, the man who just won last game from Evil Geniuses, the blue Zerg player, it is Jaedong.
So Neo Planet S. I don't think we're going to see Jaedong do a 3 hatch before pull here. Very unlikely.
No. Unless it's in his opponent's natural.
Yes, we did see that come from life earlier.
Yeah, but no, I don't think Jaedong's going to do that here. He's a little bit more reserved than life is.
Very, very risky strategy to do that in Game 3 with a siding set. I would definitely take some brass. I wonder if he's going to do any type of early speed lean play. Is he going to try to be aggressive? We saw Game 1, he made a lot of units early and tried to be aggressive, but he wasn't able to break Crank, and that put him behind. So Game 2, he played more straightforward macro, obviously worked out better for him. I think we may have seen him do a fairly standard Roach Hydra play on Neo Planet S here and orientate his goal basically around the 9 to 3rd of Crank.
Yeah, this is such a hard map for Protoss players to take that third base on, and even after they get the third base, it's hard to defend it. So, because, I mean, where do they put their army to defend both their third and their natural? You know, it's so easy for the Zerg player just to split up, keep one of the armies busy, kite that back, while the other one pushes the other side and just does a lot of damage. So, you got to wonder what type of timing is Jaedong going to do. He's going to do the pre, like a 2-base timing, just contain him, or do like a wait till his opponent takes a third base and then go in there and just try to wiggle around and do some damage that way.
We'll have to see. There's a probe being annoying, but Jaedong was able to get the hatchery down before the probe could block it. Going straight into the extractor, as I think by now he's maybe guessing, or yeah, actually I think he's just guessing based on the probe scout timing. There was a scout after gateway, which means that he does want to get the Zerg speed out because warp gate is going to be coming faster than it would with the Forge expansion.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day in Wings of Liberty, if you had a person going gateway expand and then you went speedling opening, it was like a free win essentially.
Those were the days.
Yeah, those were the days. Not much anymore. Not much with that mothership core. That's the savior of Protoss players. It seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. It allows you to do. You know what's interesting? People are like, the mothership core is kind of a little one-dimensional, or it's not that interesting. Well, it's not about the militia core being interesting. It's allowing the Protoss to do so many other interesting builds, right? Yeah,
exactly.
It adds so much flexibility to the race, and I think that's something that. It helps the game, right? The more flexible all the races are, the more interesting you can have games because it's a little bit less predictable about what players are going to be doing in the first several minutes.
Yeah, Mothership Core definitely allows him to do that with he has defensive capabilities, offensive capabilities, and the recall is really nice because there's so many situations in Wings of Liberty where the Protoss people are like, well, I'm going to attack, and when I run out of force fields, I'm dead.
Yeah, and it would be one of those things where it's like, well, to attack, I might as well go all in because it's either if the attack doesn't work, I'm dead anyway because my army's going to be wiped out, and because they can't really retreat. They're slower units. So now you see a lot of fun little poke outs with the Mothership Core. We do see the Nexus going down. Of course, there is a Mothership Core behind that to make sure he stays safe. And there's the Gateway wall in. So we're seeing the game so far. Everything looks exactly like it did in that first game on Belshir Vestige.
Yeah, and just like Jaedong taking that third base up there, the probe hasn't yet scouted that out, though. We'll see if he's going to rotate up around there. He actually has another probe going to the top side of the map. And if he can scout that out without revealing the probe there, throw up a proxy pylon, this 3-gate pressure you were talking about from Game 1, could do a lot of damage. It could be, actually, there's the proxy pylon we talked about before.
Yeah, it could be a crippling blow to Jaedong, of course. No tech behind us yet for Crank. He's constantly building probes, so you can definitely transition out of it without too much of a hassle. Overlord sees the probe, so Jaedong knows, okay, there could be proxy pylons in this zone. Crank's going to back up, probably build another pylon somewhere in this area, I would expect, as he warps in Zealot Reinforcements. Oh no, there's a speed lane.
Saw the Zealot, but he ran past the pylon.
Yeah, but if you can get the probe, you can prevent closer pylons, which actually is huge because this pylon isn't super close to the hatchery. I mean, if Zealots could jump up and climb the wall, it would be, but
yeah, that's for Legacy of the Void, right?
Yep, yeah. We'll make Zealots super Reapers because even a Reaper, I mean, Reapers can't cross this little gap here. There is. We'll see if they add that in. I would love that just because I like Zealots so much. Anything to make Zealots better, I'm all for.
Yeah, Jaedong's got Crank's number here. He's got Queens moving over. You can have an Overlord go over there just to see what gets warped in. He's got the Zerglings on the left side to keep any, future probes running in there. So he's going to try and keep this third base up. He didn't cancel. He's got the Queen up there. Roach is coming out. And with those Roaches, I mean, I think this is all but defended here for Jaedong.
Absolutely. The one thing with a build like this for Crank, if you can't get a third, as long as you make your opponent get a decent number of roaches and zerglings, it's okay. You just recall out of there. If you look at things, Jaedong's in a better spot than he was in Game 1 as far as workers, 36 instead of 33, and he's not making 22 more speedings right now. But it's still, Jaedong's still been slowed a little bit by having to get these units before really joining up to where he wants to be at.
Yeah, I think getting those roaches out was a lot better. It's at least a lot more larva cost effective. So he can get the roaches out and get a couple drones out if he needs to. And those roaches were more than enough to deal with those zealots. So handles this much better than game number 1.
And now he's got Crank pinned back into base, but he doesn't even have to do damage. He's going to see what he can get done, though. Maybe taking out that pylon would be great, actually.
That powers everything.
Yeah, I think this other pylon's out of range. Crank realizes that. And slowing down the Stargate progression is big. I mean, this is actually really big. And I mean, Crank, of course, isn't going to die here, but now he might lose the gateway. He's going to have to come out here. But he's got to be afraid about speedlings. He can't go too far away from this entryway.
Yeah, taking out that pylon is huge. Just delayed that Phoenix for so long. And, I mean, the Zealots are up there dealing some damage. He even gets a gateway for this. Killed a couple of Zealots on top of this. And Jaedong, he's just doing so much more damage even than he did in game number 1. With this a little bit of a poke out. And just because Crank only had one pylon up there powering up those 3 buildings.
That's right. And remember, if Jaedong wins this, he's 3-0 in series. And then Crank has to hope for a 3-way tiebreaker for second place. Crank really, really wants to win this. Jaedong would secure his first place seed into that playoff bracket, which will start tomorrow if he wins this match. And it's looking great so far. Crank getting a robo, more probes, additional gateways and upgrades, but all this stuff is kind of late. I mean, he's obviously because he opened the gateway pressure and Phoenixes, but 10 minutes in, just now getting robo, just now getting +1 weapons. His anti-roach type army with the Sentry Immortal, it's going to take a little while to really build up.
I mean, even if Crank killed 10 workers, he would still have a nice worker lead over Crank in this situation with 3 base, and he's going to have a 4th hatchery here. So these Phoenixes, I mean, now the Hydra out, so these Phoenixes are completely shut down.
One of them even gets taken out. Crank a little slow in the retreat.
Yeah, there's 4 crawlers up at both of the expansions, and this is not looking good at all for Crank, while it's looking amazing for Jaedong.
Yeah, Jaedong's bringing in pretty much 50% more resources than his opponent, so he can afford to be cost inefficient, but so far he's actually been fairly efficient as well. Resources lost, almost dead even for both players, and that's including a lot of the free units that the Phoenix have gone damage on, although, I mean, losing that one Phoenix probably definitely put Crank down in that resources lost column. And now Jaedong's getting a perfect scout. He sees the Robo, the Forge, the Twilight Council. Oh, you're on 2 base with a bunch of gateways, starting to get a few Immortals. You know, probably going to Blink Stalker, maybe Charge a lot. If you're going to Charge out, I'm going to crush you because I'm on 3 base Mass Roach.
Yeah, he's got the Hydra out there. The Roaches now do show up. I was kind of worried about those Hydras if they pushed out too far and then Crank trying to rain out and like shut those guys down. But the Roaches are here now. And now Jaedong is feeling, you know what? I got 3 bases. You only have 2, but I'm going to go ahead and attack you anyway. Pushing you with these Hydras is going to do so much damage. He's used that Mothership Core to get that Nexus Cannon there to keep those guys at bay just a little bit. And look at this Immortal out front. He's going to micro that guy, keep him back. Force fields do go down and to pick off 1 Hydra, but that really wasn't... I mean, he's got enough force fields that he can do that again, but just delaying the possible push here from Crank, just reducing the number of force fields.
I mean, that is his goal. Crank's still on 2 bases. He's I mean, pretty much stuck with making this attack work for him. Jaedong's got to be careful, though, because Jaedong's supply is not that far ahead of Crank's, and army values are actually very close. In fact, they're identical in the resource costs right now, and of course, Crank's going to be more cost efficient due to the having the force fields mixed into his competition, as well as having, at least if he waits for Blink and +2, very high-quality units.
Yeah, so Crank is going to make a play to this 3rd base here, but look at all those Roaches that just spawned up there. Such a small way to push forward here, but the force fields may actually be pretty effective depending on the placement of them. There we go. Those are good force fields.
Yeah, trapping a nice segment of Roaches. Now, Jaedong, meanwhile, swinging around the back with another group of Roaches, taking out the pylon. There's a Warp Prism to help warp in units, but one thing Jaedong has to be careful of is when you split your army in 2, if the Protoss can force field out half of it and engage the other half, that's what they're looking to do, but Crank sees so many units on both sides of his force, decides to recall out. Maybe he'll come back for another push because, I mean, he hasn't been building probes. He hasn't been building a 3rd base, so I feel he pretty much has to go in for another attack.
Yeah, I was kind of worried there for Crank, so I'm like, I think he's gonna he's gonna teleport out of here because his +2 wasn't done just yet, so he bought himself a little bit more time to let +2 finish, and now he's heading out here, but he's gonna get concaved on all over by Jaedong. Force fields go down the right, but the Roaches on the left and Hydra pushing forward. Nice time warp on the left there, slowing those guys down. More force fields on the right. Stalker's in a pretty decent position, but more force fields going down the left. He can do some more warp ins if he can, but he's actually Crank is actually being pretty cost effective here.
Oh yeah, I mean the force fields were great. Jaedong had an amazing concave there, so Crank had to use a lot of force fields, but he used them pretty much about as good as he could given that positioning. But now the Stalkers are starting to fall, good number going down. Crank may hold this off, but Jaedong's reinforcements are just piling through the map. Look at that train of speedlings. How many speedlings is that? He's got 71 speedlings, and against pure blinks,